Whatever you do, I'm with you, always.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for our weekly film show from confinement in Paris. And today we're going to be talking about the effect of Covid-19 on the French film industry. Starting with some figures for you, there are 6,000 cinemas closed in France, 200 film shoots were cancelled in March, and more than 150 million euros has already been lost. Let's find out some more.
Movie theaters where there isn't a soul in sight. Action, rolling, cut. Utterances of the past because of cancelled film shoots. Abandoned sets like here in Paris's Montmartre district. The French film industry has never before shut down like this. In the southwest of France, in the Ariège department, this movie theater has been empty for a month and a half. But the film projectors keep running.
Donc là, en fait, on vient plusieurs fois par semaine allumer tout le matériel numérique afin que lors de la réouverture du cinéma, tout le matériel puisse repartir convenablement.
No one knows when the some 6,000 French cinemas will be allowed to reopen. The financial cost of their shuttering keeps going up in a country where 200,000 tickets are normally sold every year. Many films have had to postpone their premiere dates. Others have gone straight to TV or video on demand. Sites like Netflix have become increasingly popular, with millions of new users in the past weeks. Nearly half of French internet users say they have access to a video streaming platform. As for film shoots, some 200 had to suddenly shut down because of the coronavirus. Even ones that had just a few days left of filming. Others had to rework their screenplays.
On a revisité les scènes qui avaient les 90-100 figurants pour les redescendre à 12 maximum. Oui, donc on a réécrit ces scènes qui étaient des scènes plutôt de foule. Voilà, on a tout changé. On peut pas faire autrement, de toute façon, on n'a pas le choix.
Action!
No one knows when things will return to normal for the French TV and film industry. Some 250,000 people work in the sector in France. Since the coronavirus lockdown, the sector is thought to have lost hundreds of millions of euros.
Si les tournages ne reprennent pas, on va se retrouver là avec un nombre de sociétés en faillite qui va être très important.
Emmanuel Macron said Wednesday that shoots will not start up again until at least the end of May, and that a fund for financial compensation will be put in place.
Well, we heard it there. Without cinema, half of the French population is now signed up to a streaming service like Netflix or Amazon Prime. We're joined now by our film critic, Lisa Nesselson. Hello, Lisa. With no date for the opening of French cinemas, this must be a terrifying prospect for you.
I have to set aside an hour a day for gnashing my teeth and rending my garments. Yes, that's fine, so long as the entities you mentioned pay their taxes here in France and don't pretend they're just out in the ether and they're not really here. I'm not really worried about movie theaters, at least here in France, because as the American director John Waters put it brilliantly decades ago, there will always be movie theaters because kids will always want to get out of the house. And from what I'm hearing, there are a lot of parents right now who have been stuck indoors with their kids who would be very happy for them to go out to a movie. Emmanuel Macron, the president, has said to all the people who work in the entertainment field here in France that it is impossible to imagine the future without your creativity, and rest assured that we will make sure the most precarious among you survive. Now, that is a very nice switch from kind of the frankly nasty stuff I'm reading online and in some financial publications about how, well, if American movie theaters go under, then they deserve to die. The understanding here is that the arts, and especially the people who are intermittents de spectacle, or temporary on and off workers in the arts, that they are very much needed to keep things going. The other thing about streaming, movie theaters are important because, say you're a homeless person, if you panhandle enough money to go to a movie, you can go to a movie. A homeless person cannot stream a movie at the home that they do not have. And this is true. I have waited in line to see a movie behind Kathleen Deneuve, and I have waited in line to see a movie behind a homeless person. Now, there's been a lot of brouhaha lately because the Universal Studios decided that they were going to take some of their titles directly to VOD, and didn't discuss this with movie theaters. And the biggest example is Trolls World Tour. And Universal found out that they had made a lot of money in a very short period of time. And they said, so we're going to be doing more of this from now on without consulting the theaters. And AMC, the biggest chain, not only in the US and in the world, said, well, in that case, we're not going to be showing your movies. A lot of big cities tore down most of their big movie theaters. And I think the Grand Rex here in Paris, it's already popular, but it could become more so because they have well over 2,400 seats and 2 balconies. And so that would be perfect. A lot of big names in the arts have been saying, look, we need to rescue the people who work in this field. We need to show more movies that aren't necessarily big crowd pleasers, but part of our heritage. And the government is in the process of answering those concerns.
And Lisa, if it hadn't been for Covid-19, you and I would be packing our bags for the Cannes Film Festival, which was due to start next week. One of the films that premiered at last year's Cannes was Terrence Malick's A Hidden Life. It's available on VOD here in France now. Let's take a look.
How simple life was then. It seemed no trouble could reach our valley. We lived above the clouds.
A Hidden Life is certainly worth watching when we're in lockdown, isn't it, Lisa? Because we are in desperate need of some nature.
Oh, it's very lush and very pastoral and absolutely attuned to every blade of grass and the glory of nature, as is so often the case in the films by this director, Terrence Mallick.
The film is based on a true story about a man who refused to fight for the Nazis in World War II. Tell us more.
Well, he was an Austrian peasant named Franz Jagerstatter, and he served with distinction 1 tour of duty in the army. But he came back from the military, having decided that if he was asked to go and swear allegiance to Hitler and fight a 2nd tour of duty, he just wouldn't be able to do that. He was a devout Christian. He had done a lot of soul searching, and he decided that that just ran against his Christian principles. He was branded a traitor, arrested, tortured, and he could have put a stop to this very real confinement and also the lethal outcome. All he had to do was recant and say, you know what, I do swear allegiance to Hitler, but he couldn't do it. The Catholic Church went along with Hitler to a great extent. He, as an individual, stood up to them, and his sacrifice was not going to change the Nazi apparatus or make them change their minds one bit. It was just a magnificent gesture that he decided to make to the universe. And in almost 3 hours of screen time, Mallick shows us why the diligence and backbone of one man can ultimately make a difference in our understanding of the universe.
Terrence Malick's A Hidden Life is available on VOD in France now. Now, moving on, Lisa, going to a drive-in was something that I dreamed about growing up. It's something that's almost completely died out in the United States, but it actually is the perfect way to experience a movie in these social distancing times, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. You know, nobody has ever referred to a regular movie theater as a walk-in, but in 1990, when I began writing for the American trade paper Variety, which is now 115 years old, we still used a term to refer to regular movie theaters to distinguish them from drive-ins, and that term was hard to top, as in having a ceiling and a roof, because there were thousands upon thousands of drive-ins, which were called ozoners, as in you were out in the ozone. It was economical for the whole family. A carload of people could go. You didn't need a babysitter. You couldn't show the movie until the sun went down. So most drive-ins had a wonderful playground for kids to run around in, mostly unsupervised. And when the sun went down, that screen was really several stories high. And of course, since everybody was in their own car, it was by definition physical distancing, social distancing. And some of the remaining drive-ins are in Florida, in Texas, and because the United States, as you know, is so drenched with car culture, going to a drive-in was actually a pretty common thing to do on a date. And there was always a guy with a flashlight kind of looking in through the windshield to make sure that everybody was actually watching the movie.
Why did they die out then?
Well, what happened is that with suburbia and urban sprawl, the land that those theaters were on, by necessity, large spaces, became too valuable to sort of waste on drive-ins, and so most of those spots were torn down and turned into industrial parks or shopping malls. People have taken this idea of projections in open spaces where people can watch from their balconies or their windows to heart, and also in Vilnius, Lithuania, they've put up a giant screen and they've been showing movies outdoors at the airport. That's a terrific idea. Here in Paris, there is a movie theater in the 5th arrondissement that has made use of a blank wall, because what is a movie projection service but a blank wall? And I believe they're showing a film with the late Kirk Douglas, who lived to be 103. And keep in mind, movie theaters as a concept are celebrating 125 years of existence this year.
Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. And for you guys at home, we're going to leave you with the French cinema Le Clé, which is bringing movies out onto the streets of Paris. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.